The kind of challenge we're talking about happens in the zone of possibility, is where high expectations meets high support. And so think about it as one leader kind of having one hand, the leader having one hand on your back, pushing you to be the best version of yourself, but the other hand is under your arm, supporting you while you navigate like the tricky terrain.
One of the biggest challenges in leadership today is how do you drive for exceptional results while building team culture where people feel genuinely motivated and find meaning in their work? Our guest today has spent her career providing clear, practical answers to those exact questions. I am delighted to introduce Tamara Myles to the podcast today. Tamara is a leading authority on performance and workplace culture. She's the author of 2 books, The Secret to Peak Productivity, which introduces her framework known as the Peak Productivity Pyramid, and more recently she is the co-author of Meaningful Work, which was released earlier this year. It's no surprise that global giants like Google, Microsoft and KPMG turn to Tamara for advice. Her expertise is regularly featured in major business publications, including Forbes and Business Insider. As a professor at Boston College and an instructor at the University of Pennsylvania, she grounds all of her practical advice in solid, cutting-edge research. She's here today to share some of that invaluable insight with us. I hope you enjoy the episode. I like to bring coaching elements into what we talk about, and I'm looking for the advice that we can give to our listeners. Your advice is not just influenced by your own day-to-day experience. There's an awful lot of extensive research that goes into what you do. So if it's okay with you, could we start there? Could you talk a little bit about the research you do and how it's influenced your work?
Yeah, definitely. So my background is in positive psychology, right? I have a master's in applied positive psychology from the University of Pennsylvania, where I learned and trained under the big founders of the field like Dr. Marty Seligman and Ryan Nemec and all of that. So my perspective is informed by this approach where we are looking at what's right and trying to get more of that, trying to highlight our strengths and trying to bring out the best in people. And so my research focuses on meaning at work, right? Because we know that meaningful work is a really powerful lever for unlocking those things that we really care about, like productivity, engagement, retention, resilience, creativity. When our experience at work feels meaningful, it leads to all those outcomes. But there was a part that was missing in the research, which was, what is the role of leaders? Because all of the research that was done on meaningful work was done from the perspective of the individual. So how can I increase my own sense of meaning at work? And of course, that's really important because a lot of it is within our control, within how we perceive the tasks that we're doing. But my co-author and research partner and I really suspected, based on our lived experience and our work with organizations, that leaders played a big role. And we were curious to find out what that role was. And also the leaders who are doing this well, what are they doing? And what can we learn from what they're doing to teach others? So that's been the main question of our research that has been ongoing now for 5.5 years. So we have a ton of data, organizations across 25 industries, thousands of people.
You've used a word I wanted to really double click on here. You said meaning. Now, meaning and purpose, you give us 2 different definitions. And for me, I think I've used those words interchangeably up until recently when I really started digging into your work. Do you want to just say a little bit about that distinction and meaning
Yes.
and purpose and how those things can help us?
Yeah, so meaning and purpose are used interchangeably very often, but they actually are 2 different things. If you can think about meaning as like the umbrella, where purpose lives under that umbrella. So purpose is a part of what makes work meaningful, but it's not the whole story, and it's not enough on its own to make work meaningful. So some misconceptions of meaningful work. I'll say some misconceptions, some of the things we hear, and then I'll define it how we define it in our study. And so The first one is that meaning and purpose are the same thing. And then the second one related to that is that if if your job is purposeful, if you work, at a purpose-driven organization, or if you work in certain industries like healthcare or teaching or social impact, that's going to make work meaningful. But that's not always true. We work with organizations that are very mission driven, that people join because of that purpose. And yet, their experience every day is not meaningful because they're missing the other elements. And so, the way we define meaningful work is work that provides a sense of community, allows you to contribute to something that matters, and challenges you to learn, grow, and develop. So these three C's, community, contribution, and challenge, are what make up our experience of meaning at work.
So it sounds like it's about alignment. It's got to be, it's
Yes.
integral. There's got to be a clear line, and everything's got to be in sync. And
Yeah.
you've mentioned the three C's, and I think meaning and purpose for me really links into that contribution side of things. Do you want to say a bit more about the model of the three C's, and then maybe zoom in on contribution?
Sure. So, what we found is that all three C's are critical for the experience to become meaningful. They all have to be present because they create a multiplier effect, right? The sum of the three is bigger than the whole because they multiply. But if any of them is missing, it cancels out the other two because you can't multiply by zero. And so it's important that they're all there, but they don't all have to be there at the same level. You can experience community and contribution at a high level, and maybe your challenge level is a little low right now, and that's okay because work still feels meaningful. So that's how the three C's work. And I'll define each one a little, like, briefly, and then I'll zoom into contribution. So community is the belief that you belong and you can show up authentically in the organization. So, people care about you. They would notice if you weren't there. They're interested in your life and what you're doing outside of work. Community says, I matter here. Contribution is about believing that what you do matters here. So, contribution is understanding the impact that you have on your colleagues, on the work that you're doing, on the customers you're impacting. So, contribution says what I do matters here. And challenge is about having someone who sees your strengths and sees your potential and invests in that potential, who believes in you and gives you meaningful challenge with support so you can reach your full potential. And so challenge says my growth matters here. So those are the three C's. That's how they show up at work. And then to zoom in on contribution, right? You're right. Contribution is where we feel that sense of purpose. And so if we go back to, the purpose of the organization and the alignment, oftentimes what brings us to the organization, especially now, this generation, starting with the millennials, but even with the Gen Z, they really want to make a difference, right? And so the purpose or the mission of the organization is really great to attract us because it attracts people who care about the same things you care about. And that's really important. But often once we get there, we don't really feel the impact that we're making every day to that purpose. And that's where contribution comes in. So contribution is about tying the tasks you're doing. And I'm sorry if you can hear my dog in the background. Tying the tasks that you're doing to the impact that you're making. And that can come from, stories of impact, but it can also come from a simple thank you, from positive feedback. And that's a tool that's simple and so underutilized.
I really appreciate you giving that extra detail and explanation. It sounds like we need to keep reinforcing that message of contribution, and in different ways and at different times, not just with our glossy message to get people in the door, but actually again and again in different ways. Is that right?
Exactly. Because often, we think about burnout as like just working too hard or having too much stress, but so often burnout comes from working hard without seeing the impact that we're making. working hard without feeling like what we do matters. And so it's really important to have that reinforcement, to have a leader who says, hey, I noticed how hard you worked on that presentation. Because of you, we were able to close that deal. Thank you so much. I mean, simple moments of recognition like that really make us feel seen and valued.
So emphasizing that contribution, if it's helping with that burnout and stress, that actually leads me into my question around challenge, because I work with a lot of people who feel their version of challenge every day, just in the pressure and the workload. And when we start talking about, hey, you could stretch yourself in this way or you could develop in that way, sometimes the shutters come down because they already feel that that's enough. But maybe if we get these other elements of contribution and community right, that might open the floor a little bit for healthy challenge.
Yeah, the interesting thing about challenge that we found is that most people don't feel like their leader, their mentor, their coaches see their strengths and their potential. Like there's research that shows that, so exit interviews when people are leaving a job, right? And there's research that shows that in the 3 months prior to them leaving, no one talked to them about their development, their potential, where they were going. And so it's not necessarily about just giving people like constant work and challenge. That's not what we mean. We developed a model that we call the zone of possibility. And so what we mean by challenge is having frequent development conversations with people, telling them what strengths you see in them, giving them opportunities to stretch and grow, but with acknowledgement that like, I'm giving you this opportunity because I believe you can do it. I've seen you do X and Y, and I know you can do this. How can I help? And this is the critical difference in our model and in our findings, is that the kind of challenge we're talking about happens in the zone of possibility, which is where high expectations meets high support. And so think about it as one leader kind of having one hand, the leader having one hand on your back, pushing you to be the best version of yourself, but the other hand is under your arm, supporting you while you navigate like the tricky terrain. And so this combination of push and support is critical for the kind of challenge we're talking about.
So I guess you really need to know your people. You need to know where they're at, where their current capability and where the edge of that is, and what support they need, so you can put that together and get the right kind of challenge.
Yeah, and one of the pushbacks we get when we describe this and say exactly what you said is, I don't have time for this. Like I manage too many people. I have my own work to do. Like, how can I do this? And the simple answer is ask them. You can ask them.
Sure.
What are your career goals? Where do you see yourself in 2 years? Where do you want to learn and grow? How can you expand? This is what I notice. I see creativity as a real strength. Do you have any interest in this or that? And then also saying, what support do you need? Or even just saying, these are the supports we have available. We have a mentorship program. We have a 20% time. And just kind of highlighting all the support available and asking, what they need. We have a budget for continuous learning. We have a book club and just highlighting those.
Yeah. So you have to care. As the leader, you've got to care.
Exactly.
And caring sometimes means doing the pushing or the accountability as well as the kindness. And if you really care about your people, you'll ask those questions, not just because they're on a crib sheet, but because you want to know the answers and you want to help.
Yeah. My research partner, Zach Mercurio, talks a lot about mattering and, meaningful work and mattering in that context. And he says it's really hard for someone to care if they don't feel cared for. And you're right. Like, I think it all comes down to caring. The community, bucket, the community seat is really about feeling cared about. Like, people here care about me. The challenge is about caring about people's development. As a leader, that should be your number one priority. You should care about your people, right?
Yeah. I mean, let's move into community. You've mentioned that. So I work in a hybrid environment. Sometimes I'm at home, sometimes
Hmm.
in the office. I'm in a dispersed team. I support people quite often through a screen. How do you get that sense of belonging and that connection, which is so important to community?
Before I answer that, can I just ask, how do you do it?
Oh wow! Now you're going to put me on the spot. I mean, I try to do it in different ways. So we as an organisation and as a team, we have collaboration days, and I really prioritise making sure that I go there for that in-person time as well. But then I also try to check in different ways and in a natural way. One thing I avoid, to give you the flip side, is I don't want to just show up to the meeting at the planned time and follow the agenda. I want to check in with people as well. If I've got a bit of spare time, I'll be thinking, who haven't I connected with recently? Who was I working on something with that maybe I just want to see how they're getting on, tell them how I'm getting on, and just reach out in the same way that you might previously have bumped into people in the corridor. I try to bump into people electronically.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, you nailed it. You're doing it. I mean, often we look for these like, you know, rocket science solutions, and when in fact the solutions are really simple. They're pretty common sense, but not always common practice. You know, you said you'd really try to show up early and not show up just on time and go through the agenda. I mean, that's where work has become so transactional. We schedule, let's say it's a remote day, we schedule Zooms like from hour to half hour, and there's no buffer. And we get in and we're like, okay, what's this one about? Let's go in. And actually, in our study, the most powerful question that predicted a strong sense of community was, does your leader care about what's happening in your life outside of work? It wasn't, does your leader know what's happening, but does your leader care? And the practices you described are how you show you care. You show up a little early and you say, hey, I remember you said you were going to go to a soccer tournament this weekend with your son. How was it? Or, hey, you told me your daughter was going to play lacrosse. Or, hey, how was the hike you went on this weekend? So this is how you show that you care. It doesn't take big moments. It's these micro moments of connection, about asking people what's going on, remembering, following up. And it can even be in the context of work, because you could say, hey, I remembered that you are, learning about meaningful work, and you're reading this book. Hey, check out this podcast I heard and I thought about you. Or I ran into this, I was reading this article and it reminded me of our conversation last week, and I wanted to send it to you. So these little moments, these micro moments of helping people feel seen, feel cared for, those really help create a sense of community.
And those are the things that we need to make time for, and people do try to make time for. You've mentioned already, managers are busy, leaders are busy. There's so much to do all of the time. It's carving out time for that important stuff and caring.
Yeah, and the research shows that it only takes 40 seconds to create a high quality connection with someone. It's these micro moments. It doesn't take that long, but it can really add up over the course of the day, over the course of the weeks and the months and the years. It really, really adds up. And, if you think about work, right, we are all solving pretty hard problems, maybe complex problems. We have real challenges that we need to find solutions for. So every day we're doing that, we're doing it together. And one of my favorite studies in social sciences is a study that came to be called the friendship effect. And they put people at the bottom of a hill, and they asked them to estimate how steep the hill is. So when people were alone at the bottom of the hill, they estimated the hill to be much steeper than if they were standing with a friend at the bottom of the hill. And if they were standing with a close friend, they estimated the hill to be even less steep. And so what this tells us is that when we feel connected to people that we're doing something hard with, that challenge feels much more surmountable. Like we can do it. It gives us efficacy and agency and optimism. And so that's why it's so important for us to feel connected at work, because it makes us feel more capable of tackling these hard problems.
Stronger together, stronger when you're supported. Yeah.
Yes.
Let's say we're working with a new leader, maybe someone who's not quite found their rhythm yet. It sounds like they really need to start on all three bases and not just go heavy on one area. How would you start that journey with someone if you were coaching someone on the three C's?
So if you want to start, let's say you want to kind of tackle the three C's, right? You can start at your next one-on-one with the person you're managing. And you can ask them about something that, hey, before we dive into all our to-dos and updates or whatever, tell me, what's making you happy right now? Or what's something you're really looking forward to that's coming up? You can just ask kind of a simple question. You don't need to, find out about their traumas and their worries or anything, but like something pretty, like a simple entry point like that, or what's something you're really proud of that, in your personal life or at work. So starting like that can be good. And then for contribution, you can say, hey, I just wanted to tell you that I really noticed how you did X, or because of you, X, Y, Z, or thank you for blah, blah, blah. And then highlighting their, contribution in that way with a simple sentence starter. And then maybe you go through all your updates and do all the things and say, all right, let's carve out some time here before our time is up. I really want to talk to you about your development. I've noticed that you're very good at interacting with people. You're great at coming up with solutions to hard problems, which tells me you're really creative. Do you feel like you're growing here? Are you challenged enough? Where are some areas that I can help you develop? What are you interested in learning more about? I mean, that you can do all that in one simple 101.
So it sounds like small steps, curiosity, genuine curiosity.
Absolutely.
And just kind of test it out, not rocket science. Yeah.
Right.
Fantastic.
Yeah. And what I didn't say, but that's very important too, is to not make it just one-sided. Share about yourself too. Share stories of impact and say, when I was just starting, I remembered something that really made a difference was when my leader did da da da. Or to say, this week we heard from a customer and they said that our product helped them save 5 hours this week because of scheduling or whatever. And like that really highlighted for me the impact that we make. Like, what do you think about that? Like, I was so inspired. So sharing your own moments of when you feel challenged, when you feel connected, when you feel like you contribute, and then even role modeling vulnerability and all of that, that's really important because it needs to go both ways.
So it's those intentional moments, I think, as you articulate it in the book, those small intentional moments, looking for those opportunities. There was another area, if you don't mind, I wanted to just take us in.
Sure.
I was really, really curious about this. So you talk about generational differences, or in fact you challenge some perceptions around generational differences. You've challenged me to think a bit differently about that, because it's not necessarily about someone's generation or age. It's more perhaps to do with where they are on their career trajectory. So it might happen to correlate with perhaps their age or generation, but that's not the defining feature.
Yeah, you got that right. And that was a surprising finding for us too. And we interviewed one of the leading researchers on generational differences and generations, Jennifer Deal, and it was really interesting. And what they find is exactly that. So research on meaningful work, not Jennifer's research, shows that all generations care about meaningful work. Right now, there's a lot of talk about like, oh, Gen Z cares about meaningful work and only Gen Z only wants to do meaningful work and all of that. And they're lazy. Well, first of all, there's no connection between wanting meaningful work and being lazy. Actually, when we feel like our work is meaningful, we tend to work harder because we are more motivated, more inspired, and all of that. But these are some of the things we hear. But what we see actually is that every generation cares about meaningful work, and it actually defines it very similarly. Now, the differences we see in the data is that if you're earlier in your career, where most of the Gen Zers are now, right? They're just entering the workforce, just finishing college and high school. Now, they care about meaningful work, but the C that resonates the most for them is challenge, right? They want somebody who believes in them, who sees their potential, who highlights their strengths, who is committed to developing them, committed to continuous learning for them, and all of that. Somebody in my generation, I'm like a younger Gen X slash millennial, um, cares about impact. We're thinking about our legacy and what do we want to leave behind. So the contribution might be a little bit stronger. But I still care about community. I want to work with people that I care about and that care about me, and we can talk about other things other than work. And I definitely still care about challenge. I want to keep learning. I want to keep growing. So all three are important. Slight differences in career stages more than in generations. Generations happen to correlate with that.
So how can we use that? I'm thinking of if I'm a leader and I want to engage with my team more, or perhaps I want to help with buy-in. How do I use that insight to actually influence the way that I communicate or work with my team?
I mean, I would say again, leading with curiosity, right? And adopting the coaching mindset where you're asking meaningful questions. And the thing with leadership is that we don't have to know all the answers. We just have to ask the right questions, right? And when we do, and when we say, hey, I just learned about these three C's and I think it's really important. I want my work to feel more meaningful. This is how they're showing up for me right now. And this is where I'm going to make more of an effort. Let's talk about it. What do you guys think about that? And like if you have a multi-generational workforce, bringing everybody together, like what should we do more of? What are some of the things you've seen work? What did you learn at a different workplace that we can try here? So like asking people, I think it's just a great place to start.
Yeah, I'm picking up a common core there. It's that curiosity, it's asking people. Nothing happens behind closed doors. There's no secret magic tricks. It's about actually talking to people and finding out what's going to work together.
Yeah, it's bring people in. People want to be a part of something. They want to belong. And that's such a good way of creating belonging, because you might find that what you think, you might be mind reading, and what you think they think might be totally off. Like they might actually be feeling great with a sense of community. They might feel very connected with each other. And maybe what they need is for you to thank them more often, or for you to create a peer-to-peer system where they can recognize each other. Or maybe what they need is more challenge because they're bored and they've already mastered what they needed to master in their current role, and they need a growth path, and they need, so I think asking is a great way. And I think if you're not ready to ask, one really easy way to start is at your next meeting, do something that we call inside scoop. So keep the first 5 minutes of the meeting set aside. So let's say you have a weekly team meeting with the whole team. Set aside the first 5 minutes and nominate someone, a different person each week, to bring a picture or an object that means something to them. And then spend the first 2 to 5 minutes just telling the story of that picture, telling the story of that object. This not only allows them to share a little bit about themselves in a way that feels safe, because they can bring whatever picture or object they want, but it also then creates connections between people. Because if I come in and I share my necklace and I say, my grandmother gave me this necklace and it's really special. I haven't taken it off since she gave it to me when I turned 40. And anytime I'm anxious, I think about her and I tell the story. Then you might say, oh my gosh, I have an object that I got from my grandparents and it's hanging on my wall in the thing. And now look at us. We both have strong connections to our grandparents. And somebody else might say, you know what I mean? And so it just creates these organic connections between people.
That sounds like a great exercise, and it's a fantastic bit of advice to bring us to the close. Before I finish off tomorrow with my standard final question, how can people find out more? Where can they connect with you?
Yeah, so I have a website. It's tamaramyles.com. There's, the latest interviews and articles that I've written. Some of the latest research is on there. I have a newsletter that I publish about once a month, once every few weeks, with my latest thinking or, what I've learned kind of in the last month. And then I'm really active on social media. Also, LinkedIn and Instagram are great ways to kind of stay in touch. Tell me what you think about what I'm doing. I always love feedback and what you want to know more about.
I'll make sure we put some links into the show notes. I'd
Awesome.
like to finish up with the same question. This, after all, is a leadership podcast. So could I ask you, who is a leader that you admire and why?
You know, I admire so many leaders. I mean, my husband, my parents, but I'm going to talk about a leader who had a big impact in my life. And her name is Madonna Badger. And I worked for her over 20 years ago in New York in advertising. And she put me in like squarely in that challenge sea. She believed in me and she saw so much potential in me and she invested in my potential. She gave me opportunities to do things that I didn't think I was ready for, where the voice in my head kept saying, like, you're not good enough or you're not ready for this. And she believed in me so much that it made me believe in myself.
Oh, fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Tamara. I really appreciate you taking the time to come on the podcast today. I've enjoyed our conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
So that was Tamara Myles. I really enjoyed my conversation with Tamara. I hope you enjoyed listening to it. There were certainly lots of practical advice and insights that we can take into our coaching and into our leadership. If you found it useful, I'm sure your colleagues will too. So please share the episode widely. Don't forget to follow if you haven't already so you never miss a future episode. Until next time, keep leading, keep learning, keep leveling up.